Welcome to the Daily Gardener, and thank you for listening. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and it is March 12th, and there are just 8 days until the first day of spring. Today, we celebrate a man remembered for bringing a ton of new and exciting plant species to California and his profound impact on Santa Barbara in particular. We'll also learn about a year of letter writing between two garden greats. And we'll hear an excerpt today about the very first time that tulip bulbs were used as money. It's a fascinating little story. And then we grow that garden library today with a stunning book about our relationship with trees. And then finally, we'll wrap things up with the sunny state flower of Kansas, the sunflower. But first, it's time for today's curated news. Today's curated news comes to us from FTD. It's National Plant a Flower Day, March 12th. And FTD offers some great suggestions for how to celebrate National Plant a Flower Day. Their suggestions include volunteering at a community garden, or adding houseplants to your home, bringing flowers to a friend to brighten their day, or even to check out your local nursery for special events. And then I loved their little Plant a Flower Day trivia. Let's see how you do here. What is the most profitable plant to grow? Well, the answer is bamboo. How about this one? What are the most common plants to grow for a science project? The answer is sunflowers and beans. Now we're going to switch up to the vegetable garden. What are the most common plants to grow in a vegetable garden? The top three. Well, the answers are tomatoes, followed by peppers, and then cucumbers. I'm surprised zucchini wasn't on the list. And then here's two additional pieces of trivia that I thought you'd enjoy. First, flowers have been shown to improve the concentration of people who work around them. And the older I get, the more I appreciate that fact. And then finally, the fastest plants to grow from a seed are the following: sweet alyssum, celosia, cornflower or bachelor button, marigold, and then finally cosmos. All of these plants sprout within 5 to 7 days. And that's especially important if you're planting with kids around, because they'll lose interest if that seed doesn't sprout quickly. So make sure to include this group of flowers on your list if you're working with little gardeners. Very sweet. It's time for today's botanical history. Here's today's botanical history for March 12th. Today is the birthday of the Italian-American horticulturist Francesco Franceschi. Born in Italy, Francesco changed his name after coming to America and settling in Santa Barbara, California. With its temperate Mediterranean climate, Santa Barbara became a haven for plant lovers in the 1800s. And so Francesco's work elevated him in the plant community in Santa Barbara. Francesco planted a boulevard of impressive Italian stone pines, and he lined another main avenue with palm trees. Always on the lookout for new plant varieties, Francesco brought Italian zucchini to California, and he introduced exciting new plants like Cape Pittosporum, floss silk, and naked coral trees to California. Fluent in 7 languages, Francesco could communicate with botanists, collectors, and explorers all over Europe and South America. Now, in terms of legacy, Francesco is remembered for bringing more exotic plants to Southern California than any other man. One in particular was the Catalina ironwood, and I thought you'd get a kick out of hearing the story of how Francesco brought this specimen to California. In 1894, Francesco made a trip to the Channel Islands with the specific mission of picking up a specimen of the Catalina ironwood. But sadly, this expedition was beset with all kinds of challenges. When rough waters threatened to sink their vessel, Francesco's sons had to bail out of the boat. Seeing the commotion and suspecting they were smugglers, the Coast Guard actually began firing on them. Yet, despite these close calls, Francesco achieved his goal, and he brought a burl stump of the Catalina ironwood back to Santa Barbara. He propagated plants from the suckers that formed off of the stump, and one of these offspring actually ended up at the Botanic Garden at UC Berkeley. 40 years after Francesco's introduction, Santa Barbara made the Catalina ironwood the official city tree of Santa Barbara. And today, next to the space where Francesco's nursery used to be, an oceanside park bears Francesco's name. And if you've ever lamented the way botanical plant names change over time, you'd be in good company with Francesco, who, after learning that the Persea gratissima was updated to the Persea americana, said, "One cannot protest strongly enough against this modern craziness of creating new names for old things." And it was on this day, March 12th, in 2001, that Nancy Goodwin of the landmark Montrose Gardens and Alan Lacy, the American garden writer and columnist, launched their garden book called A Year in Our Gardens. This is one of my favorite books, and it's a collection of the letters that Alan and Nancy exchanged during a single year. Now, what I love about Alan and Nancy's letters is that these two are truly real gardeners in every sense of the word, despite their fame and popularity. And so their letters share their horticultural wins and their failures. They talk about plants, of course, but they also share their dreams for their gardens, and they even delve into other areas of their life, like their favorite music and what's going on with their family and friends. And as for their gardens, Alan and Nancy's gardens and their garden philosophies could not be more different. Alan's garden was on a 100 by 155-foot plot of farmland in southern New Jersey. And while Alan gardened on sandy soil that required constant watering, Nancy took a different approach, and she never irrigated her garden. Instead, she planted only native plants that would thrive naturally in her garden without any intervention on her part. Anyway, I cannot believe that this is the 20th anniversary of this book coming out, this landmark garden book. And if you don't have it, I encourage you to head on over to Amazon and buy the book, because it's truly one of the great garden books. And you can get it on Amazon and support the show in today's show notes for around $2. That's what used copies are going for. It's time for Unearthed Words. Today's unearthed words were written by Mike Dash in his fabulous book called Tulipomania. And today's excerpt is from his chapter 10, and it's called Boom. Deep inside the long, low-lying cordon of islands that separated the northern provinces of the Dutch Republic from the North Sea stood the West Friesland town of Hoorn. Until the 1550s, Hoorn had been one of the most important places in the Netherlands, thriving on the Baltic trade. Now, nearly 100 years later, the ships that had once unloaded cargoes of hemp and timber at its docks sailed on to Amsterdam. Hoorn was dying. The port had slipped into a long, slow decline, from which it was never to recover. Somewhere in the center of this ruined town, in the first half of the 17th century, stood a house with 3 stone tulips carved into its facade. This was where the tulip mania began. The stone flowers were placed there to commemorate the sale of the house in the summer of 1633 for 3 rare tulips. It was in this year that the price of bulbs reached unprecedented heights in West Friesland. When news of the sale of the tulip house got out, a Frisian farmhouse and its adjoining land also changed hands for a parcel of bulbs. These remarkable transactions were the first sign that something approaching a mania had begun to flourish. For 3 decades, flower lovers had used money to buy tulips. Now, for the first time, tulips were being used as money. And just as strikingly, they were being valued at huge sums. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, Forest by Matt Collins. This book came out in 2020, and the subtitle is A Journey Through Wild and Magnificent Landscapes. In this book, Matt journeyed across North America, the United Kingdom, and Europe, along with photographer Rue Lewis, and they captured the history, science, and human stories behind some of the most amazing environments in the world. Together, the 2 men explored Earth's lush woodlands and wild landscapes. And along the way, they uncovered the relationships that humans have with trees. And here's what the publisher wrote about Matt's book. Matt explores the captivating history behind some of the world's most enchanting forests. This book is organized by tree species, including the hardy pines in a forest in Spain, the towering firs of the American West, and the striking birch groves found in Germany. And in addition to all of that, Forest offers a beautiful blend of photographs, scientific trivia, and engaging human stories. This book is 256 pages of gorgeous tree photography and the magnificence of the forests of our planet. You can get a copy of Forest by Matt Collins and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $4. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. It was on this day, March 12th in 1903, that the Kansas state flower was officially selected. Governor Willis Bailey signed the legislation that designated the wild native sunflower, or helianthus, as the state flower. And it turns out that during that same time period, Nebraska was also considering the sunflower. But when Kansas made it official, Nebraska dropped its bid. And so today, Kansas remains the only state that can officially claim the sunflower. Now, in the years leading up to the official selection of the sunflower, many Kansans were writing about its beauty. In fact, the Topeka Capitol wrote, "Kansas boasts a number of men who can write a good sunflower verse, but none of these can do it more entertainingly than Ed Blair." Ed Blair was a Kansas poet and author, and in 1901 he wrote an ode to the Kansas sunflower. Here's a little excerpt. "O sunflower, the queen of all flowers, no other with you can compare. The roadside and fields are made golden because of your bright presence there." Now, with regard to the sunflower, there are a number of fun facts that just may surprise you. First of all, they are definitely native plants to the Western Hemisphere, and through the ages, they've been used for dyes and oil and food and even medicine. In fact, in both Mexico and in Native American tribes, the sunflower was used to treat chest pain. Now, most gardeners will attempt to grow sunflowers at some point. So if you find yourself wanting to give it a try, here are a few things you should consider. First of all, sunflowers really do need a ton of sun. Don't be stingy with the sunshine and put them in part shade. These are plants that really appreciate all the rays they can get. Second, sunflowers not only grow in full sun, they actually follow the sun. They exhibit a behavior that's known as heliotropism. In the morning, the sunflower heads will face east, and then the sunflower heads will move to track the sun throughout the day. Now, as they mature, this tracking movement will become less pronounced as the stem loses its flexibility in order to support the large, mature bloom. Now, in terms of botanical history, there is a story about the sunflower that I love to tell. In 1972, a young student named Charles B. Heiser Jr. wrote a lovely tribute about his mentor and teacher, the botanist Edgar Anderson, and it was called Student Days with Edgar Anderson, or How I Came to Study Sunflowers. Charles had sifted through the many letters that he had received from Edgar during his lifetime, and they filled up a folder that was over 2 inches thick. Over the years, Edgar had been an encouraging mentor to Charles, and in one letter he had written, "What an incredible gift good students are. And if you're tired of helianthus or sunflowers, and don't want to look at them anymore for a while, why, by all means, put them aside. Don't let anybody's advice, including mine, keep you from what you're happiest doing." And here's another fun sunflower story. When the Russian Tsar, Peter the Great, saw sunflower for the first time in Holland, he fell in love with them, and he had them brought back to Russia. The Russian public loved sunflowers as well, but not just for their happy flowers. You see, unlike other cooking oils, the oil from sunflower seeds was approved for use during Lent by the Russian Orthodox Church. And so, by the early 1800s, 2 million acres of sunflowers were planted in Russia every single year. just so that people could use the oil to cook during Lent. Ironically, over the next century, immigrants from Russia would bring sunflower seeds with them when they immigrated to the United States. And even though these plants were originally native to the Western Hemisphere, the Russian hybrids actually had evolved and had bigger blooms than the original American varieties. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. Hey, thanks for spending another week with The Daily Gardener. If you worry you'll miss your daily dose of botanical brevities, just head on over to thedailygardener.org. That's where you can find all the stories and books that I share on the show. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for my free Friday newsletter. It has lots of goodies in it, and I try to make the newsletter like you're getting a marvelous letter from a garden friend. You can follow the show on Twitter, where I'm at Gardener Podcast, and you have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for listeners of the show. Just search for Daily Gardener Community the next time you're on Facebook and request to join. Last but not least, if you haven't already done so, go ahead and leave a review for the show over at Podchaser. I so appreciate reviews. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and as always, have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you on Monday.